Hey guys, tonight we're stepping barefoot into the strange, sun-drenched world of old Siamese law courts, a place where justice comes with a side of sandalwood, and punishments are so peculiar you'll wonder if you're dreaming. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a bustling city, the air thick with humidity and the distant call of temple bells. You're about to push open the heavy, carved gates of the courthouse, their teak wood worn smooth by centuries of anxious hands. The guards eye you with a practiced, almost bored suspicion. You can smell the faint tang of incense and the earthy sweetness of ripe mangoes from a nearby vendor. In this world, you probably won't survive a week without accidentally offending someone important, or at least, someone's prized chicken. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, feeling the uneven stones beneath your feet, each step echoing off the high walls. The gates swing shut behind you with a low, final thud. No turning back now. The courtyard is alive with color and sound. Court scribes in bright silk tunics scurry past, their arms full of palm leaf documents. A cluster of women gossip under the shade of a frangipani tree, their laughter mingling with the calls of street hawkers. You catch a whiff of something spicy. Maybe lemongrass, maybe just the anticipation in the AI the far end of the courtyard. The courthouse looms. It's less imposing than you'd expect, more like a grand old house than a fortress. The roof sweeps upward in gentle curves, its edges adorned with gilded naga serpents that glint in the sunlight. 2 stone lions guard the entrance, their faces worn smooth by generations of nervous petitioners who've rubbed them for luck. You wonder if you should do the same, but decide against it. After all, you're here to observe, not to tempt fate. As you step inside, the temperature drops. The thick walls keep out the worst of the heat, and the air is perfumed with sandalwood and the faintest trace of betel nut. You're greeted by a chorus of murmurs. Petty criminals, anxious families, and the ever-present hum of bureaucracy. A scribe gives you a quick once-over, his eyebrow raised in mild amusement. "Another one for the docket?" he asks, half-joking. You shake your head and keep moving, careful not to trip over the edge of a woven mat. You pass a row of benches, each one occupied by a different slice of society. A merchant clutching a basket of mangoes, a monk with his head bowed in prayer, a noblewoman fanning herself with a palm leaf. The walls are decorated with faded murals depicting scenes of justice, some noble, some less so. You spot one panel showing a man being dunked in a river, his expression a mix of terror and resignation. Another shows a judge holding up a golden mask, his face unreadable. You make a mental note to ask about that later. The main chamber is dominated by a raised platform, where the judges sit in their silks. Their faces are stern, but there's a hint of mischief in their eyes, like they know something you don't. The head judge, an elderly man with a beard as white as temple jasmine, taps his staff on the floor. The room falls silent. You take a seat at the back, trying to blend in. The proceedings begin with a flurry of activity. A scribe reading out the day's cases, a bailiff shooing away a stray cat that's wandered in. The first case is announced, a dispute over missing mangoes. You stifle a laugh, but quickly realize that in this court, even the smallest offense can spiral into something bizarre as the trial unfolds. You notice the rituals. Everyone bows to the judges, even the accused. The language is formal, almost musical, and you struggle to keep up. You catch snippets about honor, face, and the proper order of things. It's clear that justice here is as much about maintaining harmony as it is about punishment. Historians still argue whether these rituals were meant to intimidate or to reassure. Some say the elaborate ceremonies were a way to remind everyone of their place in the cosmic order. Others believe it was just a clever way to keep people from getting too rowdy. Either way, you can't help but feel a little out of your depth. Suddenly, the head judge calls for silence. He gestures to a scribe, who produces a small, intricately carved box. The merchant accused of stealing the mangoes is asked to step forward. The judge opens the box, revealing a single, perfectly ripe mango. "If you are truly innocent," the judge intones, "then the scent of this mango will not cling to your hands." The merchant hesitates, then picks up the fruit. The room holds its breath. You watch as the merchant sniffs his hands, then shrugs. The judge leans forward, his eyes twinkling. Well, it seems you are neither guilty nor particularly fragrant, he declares to a ripple of laughter. The case is dismissed, and the merchant bows deeply before scurrying out. You lean back, trying to process what you've just witnessed. Was that justice? Was it theater? Or was it something else entirely? You're not sure, but you're definitely intrigued. As the next case is called, you realize that in this place, the line between punishment and performance is as thin as a strand of silk. You settle in, ready for whatever peculiar twists the day's docket has in store. You're still adjusting to the dim, cool air of the courthouse when the next wave of impressions hits you. The room is alive with subtle movement, scribes shuffling parchment, the gentle swish of silk robes, the soft click of wooden sandals on stone. You notice that everyone seems to have a role, even if it's just to watch and whisper. The ceiling fans, lazily turning overhead, do little to chase away the humidity, but they do stir the scents. Sandalwood, betel nut, and the faint, ever-present tang of river water. Your eyes wander to the far side of the chamber, where a group of older women sits fanning themselves, their laughter low and conspiratorial. They're dressed in layers of patterned cotton, each with a gold pin glinting at her collar. You catch snippets of their conversation. Something about a neighbor's runaway goat and a magistrate's new wig. You can't help but smile. Even in a place of supposed solemnity, gossip finds a way. A sudden commotion draws your attention back to the front. A bailiff, his sash tied a little too tightly, is attempting to restore order. He waves a feathered fan, not so much to cool himself as to shoo away a persistent fly. The judges, perched above like exotic birds, exchange glances. Their silks shimmer in the filtered sunlight, each judge's robe a different shade: emerald, saffron, indigo, signifying rank, wealth, and, perhaps, their mood that morning. You realize that clothing here is more than just fabric. It's a language. The judge's elaborate attire is a statement, a reminder to everyone present that justice is not just about verdicts, but about appearances. Historians still argue whether the court's obsession with silk and gold was a genuine reverence for tradition or simply a way to show off. Either way, you wouldn't want to be caught in last year's patterns. A scribe, no older than 16, scurries past you, balancing a stack of palm leaf records almost as tall as himself. He nearly trips on the hem of his tunic, but recovers with a sheepish grin. You wonder how many secrets those palm leaves hold. Confessions, accusations, maybe even a love letter or two tucked between the lines. The head judge clears his throat, and the room quiets. He gestures for the next case to be brought forward. You watch as a nervous-looking woman, her hands stained with turmeric, approaches the dais. She bows deeply, her eyes fixed on the floor. The scribe announces her case: a dispute over a borrowed cooking pot that was returned with a suspicious dent. The judges lean in, clearly amused. One of them, a portly man with a laugh like rolling thunder, asks, "Did the pot offend you, or was it simply unlucky?" The woman stammers, insisting she's innocent. The pot, battered but serviceable, is produced as evidence. The judges examine it with exaggerated seriousness, tapping it, sniffing it, even holding it up to the light as if it might reveal the truth. You notice the crowd's reaction. Some stifle giggles, others shake their heads in mock dismay. The atmosphere is oddly light, almost festive, despite the seriousness of the setting. It's as if the court is part theater, part temple, and part village square. The judges confer in hushed tones. Finally, the head judge announces the verdict. The woman must cook a meal for the entire court using the dented pot. If the food tastes strange, she'll be considered guilty of offending both the owner and the spirit of the pot. If it's delicious, all is forgiven. The woman bows again, relief and embarrassment mingling on her face. You can't help but marvel at the creativity and the gentle humor of the punishment. It's less about retribution and more about restoring harmony, making sure everyone leaves with their dignity, and perhaps a full stomach, intact. It's no wonder scholars still debate whether these courts were more interested in justice or in keeping the peace. As the woman is led away, you spot a small shrine tucked into a corner of the room. Offerings of fruit, flowers, and a single stick of incense smolder quietly. You realize that even here, in the heart of the legal system, the spiritual world is never far away. The boundaries between law, ritual, and daily life blur until you can barely tell where one ends and the other begins. A sudden burst of laughter erupts from the judge's bench. One of the younger judges has accidentally spilled ink on his robe, and the others tease him mercilessly. The head judge, trying to hide a smile, reminds everyone that even those who judge must sometimes be judged, especially by their dry cleaners. You settle back, letting the sounds and scents of the court wash over you. The day is just beginning, and already you've seen more quirks and curiosities than you ever expected. You can't help but wonder what other peculiarities await behind these sun-baked walls. You barely have time to process the commotion over the dented pot before the next spectacle begins. The judges, now composed and regal once more, signal for the next case. The scribe, his hands still stained with ink from the earlier mishap, stands and announces a dispute involving a merchant and a nobleman. The tension in the air thickens. This isn't just about mangoes or cookware anymore. The merchant, a wiry man with sharp eyes and a nervous smile, bows deeply. The nobleman, swathed in layers of gold-embroidered silk, barely inclines his head. You notice how the crowd's whispers hush to a murmur of anticipation. In old Siam, status is everything, and the court is its grandest stage. The judges, each a splash of color on the dais, adjust their robes. Their silks catch the light, shimmering with every movement. You realize that these garments are more than just symbols. They're armor, protection against both the heat and the scrutiny of the public. Historians still argue whether the elaborate dress code was meant to elevate the judges above the fray or to remind everyone of their human frailty beneath the finery. As the case unfolds, you learn that the merchant is accused of shortchanging the nobleman during a recent trade. The evidence? A handful of rice, a chipped porcelain bowl, and a receipt written in hurried, looping script. The merchant insists it's a misunderstanding. The nobleman claims it's an insult to his honor. The judges listen, their faces unreadable, their fingers idly tracing the embroidery on their sleeves. Suddenly, the head judge raises a hand. "Let us not forget," he intones, "that justice must be seen as well as done." He nods to an attendant, who brings forth a tray of fresh silks. The judges rise, each donning a new sash with great ceremony. The crowd watches in awe. This is a rare honor, reserved for cases where dignity itself is on trial. You find yourself drawn into the ritual. The colors of the sashes, crimson, jade, and gold, seem to pulse in the filtered sunlight. The judge's movements are slow, deliberate, almost hypnotic. You wonder if this is meant to intimidate the parties or simply to remind everyone of the gravity of the moment. The verdict, when it comes, is both unexpected and oddly fitting. The merchant is ordered to weave a new sash for the nobleman, using silk provided by the court. The nobleman, in turn, must serve as the merchant's apprentice for a single day, learning the intricacies of trade. The crowd erupts in laughter and applause. Justice, in this court, is as much about teaching humility as it is about punishment. You catch the merchant's eye as he bows, a mixture of relief and disbelief on his face. The nobleman, for his part, looks as if he's swallowed a particularly sour lime. You can't help but smile. In this place, even the mighty must sometimes eat humble pie. As the court settles, you notice a young girl in the corner, her eyes wide with wonder. She tugs at her mother's sleeve, whispering questions about the judge's robes and the meaning of the sashes. Her mother answers patiently, explaining that in old Siam, justice is woven from many threads: honor, humility, and a touch of humor. A scribe records the outcome on a fresh palm leaf, his script careful and precise. You recall that these records, fragile as they are, have survived centuries. Historians still debate how much of what's written is fact and how much is embellishment. But in this moment, the truth feels less important than the lesson. The judges resume their seats, their new sashes gleaming. The head judge leans back, a satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You sense that he enjoys these moments, the chance to remind everyone that justice, like silk, is strongest when it bends but does not break. As the next case is called, you glance around the room. The sunlight has shifted, casting long shadows across the floor. The air is thick with anticipation and the faint scent of jasmine. You realize that you're witnessing not just the letter of the law, but its spirit, a delicate dance of power, tradition, and the ever-present need to keep the peace. You settle in, ready for whatever comes next. In the world of old Siamese law courts, you never know what peculiar punishment or gentle lesson awaits just around the corner. The air in the courtroom barely has time to settle before the next case is announced, and this one promises a twist. The scribe, his voice steady despite the morning's chaos, calls forth the case of the missing mangoes. You recognize the merchant from earlier, now looking even more anxious, clutching a basket filled with suspiciously perfect fruit. The accuser, an elderly woman with a steely gaze and a sun hat wide enough to shade a small village, steps forward with a dramatic sigh. You scoot forward on your bench, sensing that this is no ordinary theft. The judges seem equally intrigued, their eyes twinkling with the promise of entertainment. The head judge leans forward, resting his chin on his hand, and invites the woman to state her complaint. She launches into a tale as colorful as her sarong. Mangoes gone missing from her prized tree, footprints in the mud, and a trail of peels leading straight to the merchant's stall. The merchant protests his innocence, insisting that his mangoes are from a reputable source, which earns a few snickers from the crowd. The judges listen, their faces a study in practiced neutrality, though you spot the corners of their mouths twitching as the debate continues. The merchant offers a defense that would make any modern lawyer proud. He claims his mangoes are a different variety altogether, sweeter, juicier, and, crucially, not from the old woman's tree. The judges call for a taste test. Yes, a taste test. You watch as the bailiff, now the most popular man in the room, distributes slices of mango to each judge. The crowd leans in, eager for the verdict. The judges chew thoughtfully, smacking their lips and exchanging meaningful glances. One judge, known for his poetic flourishes, declares, "This mango is as bright as the morning sun, but the aftertaste is tinged with guilt." Another judge, less dramatic, simply shrugs and says, "Tastes like mango." You stifle a laugh, realizing that in this court, even culinary critique is a form of justice. Historians still argue whether these taste tests were genuine attempts at truth-finding or just an excuse for a snack break. Some suggest they were rooted in ancient beliefs about the connection between food and honesty. Others think the judges simply enjoyed their perks. Either way, you can't help but admire the creativity. The head judge, after much deliberation and a second helping, announces the punishment. The merchant must deliver a basket of mangoes to the temple as an offering, and the elderly woman is to supervise the picking of next season's fruit. The crowd erupts in applause, and even the merchant manages a relieved smile. The punishment is oddly gentle, more about restoring harmony than seeking revenge. As the parties bow and step aside, you notice a group of children at the edge of the room, their eyes wide with delight. One whispers to another, "Maybe next time, they'll taste test sticky rice." You grin, imagining a future court session devolving into a full-blown buffet. The judges, clearly pleased with their mid-morning snack, settle back into their seats. The scribe records the verdict, his pen scratching softly against the palm leaf. You wonder how many other culinary cases have passed through these walls, and whether any of them ended with a food fight. The thought makes you chuckle quietly. Suddenly, a commotion erupts near the entrance. A palace attendant, resplendent in blue and gold, strides in carrying a velvet pillow. Atop the pillow sits a very regal-looking cat, its fur brushed to a glossy sheen. The room falls silent as the attendant announces, "The royal cat will now offer testimony." You blink, certain you've misheard, but the judges nod solemnly. It seems you're about to witness a new level of courtroom peculiarity. You settle back, mango juice still tingling on your tongue, as the royal feline is placed on a special cushion near the judge's dais. The cat surveys the room with a look of utter disdain, as if to say, "You're all guilty of being beneath me." The judges, unfazed, prepare for the next phase of the trial. You can't help but wonder what sort of testimony a cat might give, and whether it will involve more snacks. The royal cat, perched on its velvet throne, blinks languidly at the assembled crowd. You can feel the anticipation ripple through the courtroom. Everyone is waiting to see how a feline will weigh in on matters of justice. The judges, clearly enjoying the spectacle, exchange sly glances. The head judge clears his throat, as if about to address a dignitary. "Esteemed feline," he intones, "the court requests your wisdom." The cat yawns, stretches, and proceeds to groom its paw with slow, deliberate licks. The crowd holds its breath. You're not sure whether to laugh or bow. The palace attendant, accustomed to the cat's whims, produces a small bowl of cream and sets it before the animal. The cat sniffs it, then turns away, unimpressed. The judges nod as if this is a sign of great significance. You realize that in this court, even a cat's appetite can be interpreted as evidence. The case at hand involves a dispute between two palace cooks, each claiming the other has been stealing fish meant for royal meals. The head judge, with a twinkle in his eye, announces that the cat's behavior will determine the verdict. Whichever cook the cat approaches first will be deemed innocent, the other, well, not so lucky. The cooks are summoned and stand nervously on either side of the dais, each clutching a small plate of fish. The cat surveys them, tail flicking with regal indifference. After a long, suspenseful pause, it saunters over to the left, sniffs the first cook's offering, and, after a moment's hesitation, takes a delicate bite. The crowd erupts in whispers and laughter. The judges confer, pretending to analyze the cat's choice with utmost seriousness. It appears, the head judge declares, that the left cook is favored by fortune and feline wisdom. The right cook shall spend a week cleaning the palace kitchens. The guilty cook bows, resigned, while the innocent one beams with relief. Historians still argue whether the use of animals in court was a genuine attempt to invoke divine will or simply a clever way to diffuse tension. Some suggest that animals, seen as pure and uncorrupted, were believed to sense truth in ways humans could not. Others think it was all just a bit of light-hearted theater, a way to keep proceedings from turning too grim. Either way, you have to admit, it's more entertaining than most modern trials. As the cat finishes its snack and curls up for a nap, the judges turn their attention back to the docket. The scribe, barely containing his grin, records the verdict with a flourish. You glance around and see that even the sternest faces in the room have softened. There's something oddly comforting about the idea that, in old Siam, justice could hinge on the whims of a pampered pet. The palace attendant scoops up the cat and exits with a bow. The judges, still chuckling, prepare for the next case. You wonder what other animals have played a role in these courts. Dogs sniffing out stolen goods, perhaps, or elephants settling land disputes. The possibilities are endless. As the crowd settles, you overhear a pair of merchants debating the merits of feline justice. "At least the cat is fair," one says. "It doesn't care who you are, only what you offer." The other nods, adding, "Unless you're allergic, then you're doomed." You stifle a laugh, imagining a defendant sneezing their way to a guilty verdict. The next case is called, and you sense the mood in the room has shifted. The laughter lingers, but there's a renewed sense of curiosity. What other peculiar punishments and rituals await? You're beginning to realize that in this world, justice is as much about community as it is about crime and consequence. As the scribe prepares his next palm leaf, you catch a glimpse of the judges whispering among themselves. One of them gestures toward a heavy curtain at the back of the room. You wonder what secrets lie behind it. Perhaps the next trial will reveal something even stranger than a cat's testimony. You settle in, eager for the next chapter in this parade of peculiarities. If you've learned anything so far, it's that in the old Siamese law courts, you should always expect the unexpected, and maybe keep a saucer of cream handy just in case. The curtain at the back of the courtroom stirs, and a hush falls over the crowd. You lean forward, curiosity piqued. The scribe, with a dramatic flourish, announces the next case. A dispute between two noble families over a patch of land bordering the royal elephant stables. Instantly, the atmosphere shifts. This is serious business. Elephants, after all, are not only royal property but also revered as living symbols of strength and wisdom. The doors swing open, and in lumbers the star witness. A majestic elephant, its hide dusted with gold powder, ears gently flapping. The animal's handler, a wiry man with a sun-baked face, leads it to a designated spot in the center of the courtroom. The elephant surveys the assembly with a calm, almost regal gaze, its trunk curling and uncurling in slow, thoughtful arcs. The judges rise in unison, bowing respectfully to the elephant. You can't help but notice that even the most powerful people in the room seem to shrink in the presence of such a creature. The noble families, resplendent in their finest silks, exchange nervous glances. The stakes are high, and the outcome will depend, at least in part, on the elephant's judgment. The head judge explains the ritual. The elephant will be presented with 2 bundles of sugarcane, each marked with the insignia of one of the families. Whichever bundle the elephant chooses will determine the rightful owner of the disputed land. The crowd murmurs in approval. This is a well-known tradition, and everyone seems to have an opinion about which family the elephant will favor. Historians still argue whether the elephant's role in such cases was purely symbolic or if there was genuine belief in the animal's ability to sense justice. Some suggest that elephants, with their keen intelligence and strong social bonds, were thought to embody the virtues most prized by the Siamese: loyalty, wisdom, and fairness. Others believe the ritual was simply a way to avoid direct confrontation between powerful families. After all, it's hard to argue with an elephant. The bundles are placed before the elephant, and the handler steps back. The room is so quiet you can hear the soft swish of the elephant's tail. The animal sniffs the air, then ambles over to the left bundle, picking it up with its trunk and munching contentedly. The chosen family erupts in cheers, while the other bows their heads in acceptance. The judges nod, satisfied that justice has been served, at least as far as the elephant is concerned. You marvel at the spectacle. Where else in the world would a land dispute be settled by a hungry elephant? The losing family, though disappointed, accepts the outcome with surprising grace. The head judge offers a few words about the wisdom of respecting nature's verdict, and the elephant is rewarded with a garland of fresh flowers that as the animal is led out. You notice a group of children pressing their faces to the windows, eyes wide with awe. One whispers, "Maybe next time, the elephant will choose the other side." You smile, realizing that for many, the court is as much a place of wonder as it is of law. The judges return to their seats, their silks rustling softly. The scribe records the verdict, adding a small sketch of the elephant to the palm leaf record. You wonder how many such cases have been decided by animals, and whether any of the verdicts were ever challenged. Scholars still debate the legitimacy of these animal-assisted judgments, but one thing is certain: they make for memorable stories. The next case is called, and the courtroom returns to its usual buzz. But for a moment, everyone seems lighter, as if the elephant's calm wisdom has left a gentle imprint on the day. You settle back, grateful for the chance to witness such a uniquely Siamese blend of tradition, spectacle, and, yes, a little bit of luck as the sunlight shifts and the fans stir the scented air. You find yourself wondering what other surprises the court has in store. If elephants can settle land disputes, what might happen when the next case involves something even messier, like a question of honor or a test of truth? You close your eyes for a moment, letting the memory of the elephant's steady presence linger. In this place, justice is more than rules and punishments. It's a living, breathing thing, shaped by the people, the animals, and the stories that fill these ancient walls. The scribe's voice, now tinged with anticipation, calls for the next case. You notice a few people in the crowd exchange knowing glances. Something unusual is about to happen. The head judge, with a mischievous twinkle in his eye, announces that the court will now hear a matter of sworn innocence. This is no ordinary oath, however. You've heard whispers about this ritual, but nothing quite prepares you for the reality. The infamous crocodile dung oath that a young man, accused of stealing a bolt of silk from the market, is led to the center of the room. He looks pale but determined, his eyes darting nervously between the judges and the crowd. The head judge explains the procedure in a tone that's both grave and faintly amused. The accused must swear his innocence while placing his hand in a bowl of crocodile dung. If he lies, it is believed, the spirits will ensure his guilt is revealed, either by a sudden illness, a rash, or, in the most theatrical retellings, a bout of uncontrollable hiccups. You watch as an attendant enters with a lacquered tray, atop which sits a small, ornate bowl. The contents are unmistakable, even from a distance. The smell wafts through the air, causing several people to wrinkle their noses and a few to stifle giggles. The accused hesitates, then, with a deep breath, plunges his hand into the bowl. The room is silent except for the distant hum of a ceiling fan and the soft squelch of the ritual. Historians still argue whether the crocodile dung oath was ever truly believed to have mystical powers, or if it was simply a clever way to make liars think twice. Some suggest it was a test of nerves, designed to rattle the guilty and amuse the innocent. Others point out that the ritual's origins are lost to time. Perhaps it began as a practical joke, or perhaps as a way to involve the community in the spectacle of justice. The young man, hands still submerged, swears his innocence in a trembling voice. The judges watch closely, searching for any sign of guilt or discomfort. The crowd leans in, eager for a hint of drama. After a long, tense moment, the head judge nods and signals for the attendant to remove the bowl. The young man wipes his hand on a cloth, relief flooding his face. The verdict? The judges, after a brief consultation, declare that the spirits have found no evidence of guilt. The young man is free to go, though he'll likely be scrubbing his hand for days. The crowd erupts in laughter and applause, the tension broken. The scribe, ever diligent, notes the outcome in the court records, adding a tiny doodle of a crocodile for posterity. You can't help but marvel at the creativity of the punishment. It's humiliating, yes, but also strangely humane. No one is harmed, and everyone gets a story to tell. You imagine future generations recounting the tale of the crocodile dung oath, embellishing it with each retelling until it becomes legend as the crowd settles. You overhear a group of elders reminiscing about the good old days, when oaths involved even stranger substances. One claims, with a wink, that his uncle once had to swear innocence while balancing a frog on his head. You file that away in your mental archive of things you hope never to experience. The judges, clearly enjoying themselves, prepare for the next case. The head judge, unable to resist a final joke, announces, "Let all who enter this court beware. The truth may be slippery, but so is the crocodile." The room erupts in laughter once more. You lean back, letting the laughter and the lingering scent of sandalwood wash over you. In this place, justice is never dull, and even the most peculiar punishments carry a lesson. Sometimes, the truth is best revealed with a little bit of mess. The laughter from the crocodile dung oath is still echoing through the rafters as the next case is called. You notice a subtle shift in the mood. There's a sense of anticipation, but also a hush, as if everyone knows what's coming is not just amusing but deeply traditional. The head judge, now fully in his element, announces a trial by water, or as the locals call it, the floating ordeal. The middle-aged woman, accused of spreading rumors about a neighbor's harvest, stands at the center of the room. She looks determined, her chin lifted defiantly. The judges explain, to prove her innocence, she must float across the temple pond on a small raft made of banana trunks. If she makes it to the far shore without falling in, the spirits have judged her pure. If she tumbles into the water, well, perhaps the spirits know something she doesn't. You follow the procession out of the courtroom and into the sticky midday heat. The temple pond glitters in the sunlight, its surface dotted with lotus flowers and the occasional curious frog. The crowd gathers along the banks, fanning themselves and trading predictions. The accused steps onto the makeshift raft, her bare feet gripping the slick banana trunks. The judges, seated beneath a striped canopy, watch with solemn faces. Though you suspect at least one is hiding a smile, historians still argue whether the floating ordeal was ever meant as a true test of guilt or simply a community spectacle. Some say it was a remnant of ancient animist beliefs, where water spirits were called upon to judge the living. Others point out the practical side, a clever way to turn a trial into a public event, reinforcing social bonds and providing a little entertainment on an otherwise ordinary day. The woman steadies herself, knees slightly bent, arms outstretched. The crowd falls silent as she pushes off from the bank, the raft wobbling beneath her. For a moment, it looks as if she'll topple immediately, but she regains her balance with a determined wobble. Inch by inch, she glides across the pond, her reflection rippling in the water below. Halfway across, a breeze stirs, and the raft rocks dangerously. The crowd gasps. You hold your breath, imagining the embarrassment of a sudden dunking, and the gossip that would surely follow. But the woman steadies herself, eyes fixed on the far shore. With one final push, she reaches the opposite bank, stepping off the raft with a triumphant grin. The judges rise, applauding her composure. The head judge declares her innocent, and the crowd cheers. Someone hands her a garland of jasmine, and she bows deeply, relief written across her face. You can't help but admire her poise and her balance. You're not sure you'd fare as well, especially after a morning of mangoes and courtroom snacks. As the crowd disperses, you overhear a group of children plotting their own floating ordeal in the village pond later that day. You smile, picturing a line of wobbly rafts and triumphant splashes. In old Siam, it seems justice is as much about community as it is about consequence. The judges return to the shade of the courtroom, their silks now slightly rumpled from the heat. The scribe records the verdict, adding a small wave motif to the palm leaf. You wonder how many such ordeals have taken place over the centuries, and whether the spirits ever truly intervened. Scholars still debate the origins and meanings of these rituals, but one thing is clear. They make for unforgettable stories. As you settle back onto your bench, you realize that in this world, even a punishment can be a test of courage, balance, and a little bit of luck. You find yourself hoping the next case involves something a bit less precarious, perhaps a scented whip or a bamboo cage. But then again, in the Siamese courts, you never know what's coming next. The judges return to their seats, fanning themselves with palm leaves as the crowd settles in once more. The scribe, his fingers still smudged with ink, announces the next case with a flourish. A merchant accused of cheating his customers with watered-down jasmine perfume. You notice the crowd perk up. Perfume is a luxury, and any scandal involving it is sure to be juicy. The accused, a plump man with a nervous smile and a suspiciously fragrant aura, bows deeply. The judges glance at one another, clearly amused. The head judge raises an eyebrow and asks, "And what does justice smell like today?" The crowd titters, and the merchant's ears turn pink. The punishment for this crime is as peculiar as it is poetic. The scented whip. The merchant is led to the center of the room, where an attendant produces a thin cane dipped in a mixture of jasmine oil and sandalwood. The idea, the judge explains, is not to cause pain but to inflict a gentle, fragrant humiliation. Each stroke leaves a streak of perfume on the merchant's robe, a mark of his misdeed for all to see, and smell historians still argue whether the scented whip was ever truly a deterrent or just a way to make punishment more palatable. Some say it was rooted in the belief that shame, not pain, was the best teacher. Others suggest it was simply a creative way to keep the peace in a society where harmony was prized above all else. Either way, you can't help but appreciate the artistry. The merchant braces himself as the attendant delivers 3 light strokes, each accompanied by a waft of jasmine that drifts through the room. The crowd watches in fascination, some stifling giggles, others sniffing the air appreciatively. The merchant, to his credit, stands tall, though you suspect he'll be avoiding the perfume market for a while. After the punishment, the judges invite the merchant to offer a formal apology to his customers. He bows deeply, promising to use only the finest ingredients from now on. The crowd applauds, and a few women in the front row exchange knowing smiles. No one believes he'll give up his shortcuts entirely, but at least he'll think twice before trying it again. The scribe records the verdict, adding a tiny flower next to the merchant's name. You wonder how many other punishments in this court are designed to be both memorable and mildly embarrassing. It seems that in old Siam, justice often came with a touch of humor, and a pleasant after-scent that as the merchant is led away, you catch a whiff of jasmine lingering in the air. You can't help but smile, imagining a world where all punishments leave you smelling better than when you arrived. The judges, clearly pleased with themselves, settle in for the next case. You glance around the room, noticing that even the most serious faces have softened. The combination of gentle humor, ritual, and community seems to work wonders. You find yourself relaxing, lulled by the rhythm of the proceedings and the soothing scents that fill the air. The next case is announced, but your mind lingers on the idea of the scented whip. Historians may never agree on its true purpose, but one thing is certain. It's a punishment you're not likely to forget. You settle back, ready for whatever peculiar twist the Siamese courts have in store next. Perhaps something involving a bamboo cage or a missing pair of shoes. As the scent of jasmine lingers in the air, the scribe shuffles his palm leaves and calls the next case. This time, the charge is not theft or deception, but public nuisance. Specifically, a young man accused of singing off-key at the morning market and disturbing the peace. The crowd perks up, some already suppressing grins. Clearly, this is not the first time this particular defendant has found himself before the court. The young man, dressed in a faded sarong and clutching a battered bamboo flute, bows sheepishly. The head judge fixes him with a stern, but not unkind, gaze. "You have been warned before," he says. "Yet still you serenade the fishmongers before sunrise." The crowd chuckles, and the young man shrugs, a crooked smile on his lips. The judges confer, their silks rustling like wind in the trees. They seem to relish the challenge of devising a punishment that fits the crime. After a moment, the head judge announces the sentence. The bamboo cage, a pair of attendants brings forth a small, cylindrical cage woven from thick bamboo strips. It's just large enough for a person to sit cross-legged inside, but not much more. The young man is gently guided into the cage, which is then placed in the center of the courtyard for all to see. The punishment is not harsh, but it is certainly uncomfortable, and, most importantly, public. Historians still argue whether the bamboo cage was intended as a true deterrent or simply as a spectacle. Some suggest it was a way to shame minor offenders without resorting to harsher penalties. Others believe it was a practical solution for keeping troublemakers out of the way while still allowing the community to witness justice in action. Either way, the effect is immediate. The crowd gathers around, some offering sympathetic smiles, others teasing the young man with exaggerated bows and mock applause. Inside the cage, the young man seems more amused than chastened. He begins to hum a tune, deliberately off-key, which earns him a round of laughter from the onlookers. One of the judges, trying to hide a smile, remarks, "Perhaps a day in the cage will teach you the value of silence, or at least of harmony." The young man winks, promising to compose a new song in honor of the court. The scribe records the sentence, drawing a tiny cage next to the defendant's name. You notice that the punishment, though mildly humiliating, is also strangely communal. People bring the young man snacks and water, and a group of children gather around to hear his stories. It's as if the cage has become a stage, and the punishment a performance. You can't help but reflect on the ingenuity of the Siamese legal system. Here, justice is not just about retribution, but about reintegration, reminding the offender of his place in the community and giving him a chance to redeem himself through humor and humility. The bamboo cage, for all its discomfort, is a gentle nudge rather than a harsh blow. As the sun climbs higher and the shadows shift, the young man's sentence comes to an end. He is released from the cage, bows deeply to the judges, and promises to keep his singing to more appropriate hours. The crowd disperses, already speculating about the next case. You settle back onto your bench, the image of the bamboo cage fresh in your mind. Historians may never agree on its origins or true purpose, but you're beginning to see the wisdom in these peculiar punishments. They are, in their own way, as much about healing as about justice. You take a deep breath, savoring the mingled scents of jasmine, sandalwood, and fresh bamboo. The day is far from over, and you can't help but wonder what other oddities the Siamese courts have in store. Perhaps a case involving missing shoes, or a whispering monk, or something even stranger still. The sun is now high, casting sharp shadows through the open windows as the scribe calls the next case. The mysterious disappearance of a pair of shoes from the temple steps. The crowd stirs with interest. Shoes, in this humid climate, are precious, and their loss is no small matter. The accused is a wiry boy with quick eyes and bare feet, who bows so deeply his forehead nearly brushes the floor. The head judge sighs, a touch theatrically, and asks, "What have you to say for yourself?" The boy insists he found the shoes abandoned and only borrowed them to run an errand for his grandmother. The owner, a stern-faced monk, claims otherwise. his arms folded and his expression as immovable as the temple's stone lions. The judges confer, their voices a soft murmur. You notice the scribe doodling a pair of sandals in the margin of his palm leaf, perhaps anticipating a memorable verdict. The head judge leans forward, a sly smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, and announces a punishment that is as baffling as it is amusing. The case of the disappearing shoes will be solved by the Great Shoe Relay. Attendants bring out a collection of mismatched sandals, slippers, and clogs, forming a pile in the center of the courtyard. The boy is instructed to match every shoe with its rightful owner, relying only on his memory and the clues provided by the crowd. If he succeeds, he is forgiven and even rewarded with a new pair. If he fails, he must spend the afternoon sweeping the temple steps, barefoot, of course. Historians still argue whether this sort of punishment was meant to be a genuine test of honesty, a lesson in community responsibility, or simply an elaborate game. Some say it was rooted in the belief that a sharp mind and a good memory were virtues worth cultivating. Others suggest it was a way to turn minor transgressions into teachable moments, reinforcing the bonds between neighbors. The boy, undaunted, sets to work. He holds up each shoe, examining the wear patterns, the faded embroidery, the telltale smudge of red clay. The crowd gets involved, shouting hints, teasing, and occasionally trying to claim a shoe that clearly isn't theirs. Prompting laughter and playful scolding from the judges. It becomes clear that the punishment is as much about spectacle as it is about justice. The boy, quick-witted and observant, manages to match nearly every shoe correctly. Only one stubborn sandal remains, its owner nowhere to be found. The judges, amused, declare the task complete and award the boy a new pair of sandals, brightly painted with tiny bells that jingle when he walks. The monk, seeing the boy's effort and the goodwill of the crowd, relents and offers a blessing instead of a scolding. The boy bows deeply, gratitude shining in his eyes. The scribe records the outcome, drawing a tiny sandal beside the case notes that as the crowd disperses, you reflect on the peculiar wisdom of the Siamese courts. Here, even a case of missing shoes becomes an opportunity for laughter, learning, and a little bit of magic. The punishment, though mildly embarrassing, is ultimately restorative. A gentle reminder that justice can be both firm and forgiving. You settle back, the sound of the boy's jingling sandals echoing in your ears. The day is only half done, and you can't help but wonder what other strange and wonderful punishments await. Perhaps a whispering monk or a chicken's verdict. After all, in this place, anything is possible. The echoes of laughter from the shoe relay still linger as the scribe clears his throat for the next case. This time, the matter is more solemn. A dispute between two neighbors over the mysterious disappearance of a prized betel nut tree. The judges call for witnesses, and to your surprise, a procession of monks enters the courtroom, their saffron robes glowing in the sunlight. The air shifts, the crowd falling respectfully silent. In Siam, monks are revered not only for their spiritual wisdom but also for their rumored ability to sense hidden truths. The head judge bows to the monks, inviting them to divine the truth. The monks seat themselves cross-legged on woven mats, their eyes closed in meditation. The accused and the accuser are brought forward, each nervously recounting their story. The accuser claims his neighbor stole the tree under cover of darkness. The accused insists he is innocent, suggesting that perhaps the spirits, or a wandering water buffalo, are to blame. You watch as one of the elder monks begins to chant softly, his voice a low, soothing hum. Another monk sprinkles water on the ground, while a third listens intently to the rhythm of the accused heartbeat. The crowd watches, entranced, as the monks confer in whispers so quiet you can barely hear them. Historians still argue whether the monk's role in court was truly about uncovering truth or simply about lending spiritual gravitas to the proceedings. Some believe the monk's presence was meant to remind all parties of their higher moral duties, while others suspect it was a clever way for judges to defuse tension and encourage reconciliation. Either way, the effect is immediate. The accused and accuser both seem calmer, their voices softer, their accusations less sharp. After a long, meditative pause, the eldest monk speaks. The truth, he says, is like the betel nut, sometimes hidden beneath many leaves. He suggests that both neighbors share the remaining beetle nuts from the disputed tree and plant new saplings together, blessing the ground for future harmony. The judges nod in approval, and the crowd murmurs their agreement. The scribe records the verdict, his handwriting a little neater than usual, perhaps out of respect for the monks. You notice that the punishment is not really a punishment at all, but a gentle nudge toward reconciliation. The monks offer a final blessing, sprinkling water over the two neighbors as they bow to each other. You reflect on the subtle power of the monk's presence. Here, justice is not always about finding a culprit or exacting a penalty. Sometimes, it's about restoring balance between neighbors within the community and inside each person's heart. The monks, with their quiet wisdom, remind everyone that peace is often more valuable than victory. As the monks file out, the atmosphere in the courtroom feels lighter, as if a gentle breeze has swept through. The judges seem pleased, the crowd content. You find yourself breathing a little deeper, grateful for the moment of calm amid the day's peculiarities. The next case is already being prepared, but you linger on the memory of the whispering monks. Their chants, their blessings, their quiet authority, all blend together, leaving a sense of serenity that lingers long after they've gone. You wonder what the next case will bring. Perhaps something involving a chicken's verdict, or a golden mask of shame. In this court, you've learned, the line between the sacred and the silly is always shifting, always surprising. No sooner have the monk's blessings faded than the scribe, with a mischievous glint in his eye, announces the next case. A village quarrel over a stolen basket of eggs. The accused, a wiry woman with a stubborn chin, protests her innocence. The accuser, her neighbor, is equally adamant. The judges, perhaps sensing the need for a lighter touch, decide it's time for one of the court's most peculiar rituals. The chicken's verdict. Attendants appear, carrying a large, woven cage containing a single, rather unimpressed-looking hen. The crowd buzzes with excitement. Everyone knows the chicken's verdict is more spectacle than science, but it's a tradition that brings the whole community together. The judges explain the rules. Both parties will stand on opposite sides of the room, each holding a handful of rice. The chicken will be released in the center, and whichever side it pecks at first is declared the winner. You watch as the accused and accuser take their places, trying to look nonchalant while subtly shaking their rice to attract the hen's attention. The scribe, barely suppressing a grin, records the scene on his palm leaf, adding a tiny chicken doodle in the corner. The head judge raises his staff and, with great ceremony, signals for the chicken to be released. The hen, clearly in no rush, struts around the room, pausing to inspect a stray sandal and pecking at a bit of lint. The crowd holds its breath, some stifling giggles, others whispering predictions. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the chicken ambles over to the accused and begins pecking at her rice. The accuser groans, the accused beams, and the crowd erupts in applause. The judges, maintaining their dignity, announce that the chicken has spoken. The accused is innocent, and the matter is settled. The accuser is encouraged to let go of her grudge and is offered a basket of eggs from the court's own stores as a gesture of goodwill. Historians still argue whether the chicken's verdict was ever meant to be taken seriously. Some suggest it was a clever way to resolve disputes that had no clear evidence. Better to let fate or poultry decide than to risk hard feelings. Others think it was simply a bit of harmless fun, a way to lighten the mood and remind everyone that not all problems have tidy solutions. You can't help but chuckle at the absurdity. Here, justice is not always about logic or proof. Sometimes, it's about accepting the randomness of life and moving on. The chicken, meanwhile, seems entirely unfazed by its role as arbiter of truth, content to peck at rice and bask in the attention as the crowd disperses. You overhear a group of children debating whether a duck might be even wiser than a chicken. One suggests that next time they should try a goat. You file these ideas away, fully aware that in the Siamese courts, nothing is off limits. The scribe records the verdict, his palm leaf now adorned with a second, slightly larger chicken. The judges, still smiling, prepare for the next case. You find yourself relaxing into the rhythm of the day, grateful for the moments of levity that balance out the more serious disputes. You wonder what the next case will bring. Perhaps a golden mask of shame, or a punishment that's more about saving face than causing pain. In this court, you've learned justice is as unpredictable as a chicken in a room full of rice. And sometimes that's exactly what people need. As the echoes of the chicken's verdict fade, the scribe calls the next case with a flourish that suggests something special is about to unfold. The crowd leans in, sensing a shift from playful to profound. The head judge announces that a nobleman stands accused, not of theft or rumor, but of public arrogance, a charge as weighty as any in a society where reputation is everything. The nobleman, tall and immaculately dressed, bows stiffly. His golden rings glint in the sunlight, but his eyes betray a flicker of unease. The accuser, a merchant with a battered hat and a steady voice, claims the nobleman insulted his family in the marketplace, refusing to apologize and boasting loudly of his own importance. The judges listen, faces grave. For in old Siam, pride can be as disruptive as any crime. After a brief deliberation, the head judge announces a punishment both symbolic and unforgettable: the golden mask penalty. An attendant brings forth a heavy, ornate mask, its surface hammered from gold and etched with swirling patterns. The mask is beautiful, but its weight and the way it hides the wearer's face make it a tool of shame rather than honor. The nobleman is instructed to wear the mask and walk slowly around the market square, accompanied by a bell ringer who announces his offense to all who gather. The crowd in the courtroom murmurs. Some are sympathetic, others quietly satisfied. You watch as the nobleman's shoulders tense, the mask placed gently but firmly over his face. Historians still argue about the origins of the golden mask penalty. Some claim it was inspired by ancient rituals meant to humble those who lost touch with the community. Others believe it was a clever way to invert the symbols of status, turning gold, a sign of wealth, into a mark of public contrition. There's even debate about whether the mask's beauty was meant to soften the blow or heighten the embarrassment. The nobleman rises, his features hidden behind the gleaming mask. The bell ringer leads him out, and you imagine the hush that must fall as the procession weaves through the marketplace. Children peek from behind stalls, merchants pause in their haggling, and the nobleman's every step rings with the lesson that pride, when unchecked, can become its own cage. The judges watch the nobleman's exit in silence. The scribe, ever diligent, sketches a tiny mask beside the case notes. You reflect on the power of such a punishment. It is not violent, but it is deeply felt. The mask's weight is both literal and symbolic, a reminder that status in old Siam was as fragile as gold leaf. As the nobleman returns, mask removed but posture softened, he bows deeply to the merchant and the judges. The merchant accepts the apology, and the crowd breathes a collective sigh of relief. The punishment has worked its magic. Dignity restored, harmony renewed. You find yourself pondering the wisdom of the golden mask. In a world obsessed with appearances, sometimes the only way to teach humility is to make pride visible for all to see. The nobleman, now just another face in the crowd, slips quietly from the courtroom, his lesson learned. The judges prepare for the next case, their expressions thoughtful. You sense that the day's rhythm has changed. There's a new gravity in the air, a reminder that justice in old Siam is not just about laughter and spectacle, but also about restoration and balance. You settle in, ready for whatever peculiar, poetic punishment comes next. The golden mask has barely been returned to its velvet-lined box when the next case is called. A matter so minor, you almost miss the announcement. The scribe, with a barely concealed grin, declares that the accused is a chronic yawner. Yes, you heard right. A man who cannot stop yawning in the courtroom, disrupting proceedings and, according to several witnesses, causing a chain reaction of sleepiness among the audience. The accused, a middle-aged man with drooping eyelids and a sheepish grin, stands before the judges. He bows, stifling yet another yawn, which ripples through the crowd like a gentle wave. The head judge, valiantly suppressing a smile, asks, "Do you find our court so dull, or is your pillow simply too far away?" The crowd titters, and you find yourself fighting the urge to yawn as well. The judges confer, their voices low and playful. After a moment, the head judge announces the sentence: the public yawn. The man must stand at the front of the court and yawn, as widely and dramatically as possible, for the amusement of all. If anyone else yawns in sympathy, they must join him at the front until a chorus of yawners is formed. Only when the judges are satisfied that the room has been thoroughly cleared of sleepiness may the proceedings continue. Historians still debate the origins of this peculiar punishment. Some say it was invented by a particularly witty judge who grew tired of dozing spectators. Others believe it was a ritual meant to air out the court's collective fatigue, turning a nuisance into a communal joke. There's even a theory that the public yawn was secretly a way for judges to gauge who was truly paying attention. After all, only the bored or the guilty yawned, right? The man takes his place at the front, drawing a deep breath and letting out a yawn so theatrical that the entire room erupts in laughter, and inevitably more yawns. One by one, others join him, until a line of yawners stands before the bench, arms stretched and mouths wide. The judges, now openly chuckling, declare the court purged of drowsiness. The scribe records the event, sketching a row of open-mouthed faces on his palm leaf. The man, now fully awake and grinning, bows to the judges. The crowd applauds, some wiping away tears of laughter. You realize that in this court, even the smallest disruption can be transformed into a moment of shared joy as everyone settles back into their seats. The atmosphere feels lighter, the earlier gravity replaced by a sense of camaraderie. The judges, clearly pleased, prepare for the next case. You find yourself reflecting on the wisdom of the public yawn. Sometimes the best way to deal with a problem is to embrace it, turning embarrassment into entertainment and sleepiness into a celebration. You stretch, stifle a yawn of your own, and settle in for the next peculiar punishment. Perhaps it will involve betel nut or a night watchman's lantern parade. In the Siamese courts, you've learned there's never a dull moment, unless, of course, you count the yawns. The echoes of laughter and yawning fade as the scribe, now thoroughly entertained, calls the next case. This time, the offense is both mundane and oddly specific. Chewing betel nut in court. The accused, a spry woman with stained teeth and a mischievous glint in her eye, stands before the judges, her lips tinged a telltale red. She bows, but not before popping another sliver of betel nut into her cheek, drawing a chorus of giggles from the crowd. The head judge sighs in mock exasperation. We have asked, pleaded, and posted signs. Yet still, the betel nut finds its way into our court. The woman shrugs, grinning. It keeps me awake, Your Honor. Better than yawning, yes? The crowd erupts in laughter, and even the judges can't help but smile. The judges confer, clearly enjoying the challenge of crafting a punishment for such a harmless, yet persistent, offense. After a moment, the head judge announces the verdict, the betel nut ban. For the remainder of the day, the woman is to serve as the court's official betel nut monitor. She must gently remind others not to chew in the courtroom, and if she catches anyone sneaking a bite, she must recite a tongue twister about betel nuts. 3 times without stumbling. Historians still argue whether the betel nut ban was ever seriously enforced or if it was simply a playful way to keep order. Some say it was rooted in the ancient belief that too much betel nut could cloud the mind and disrupt the flow of justice. Others suggest it was just an excuse for judges to hear their favorite tongue twisters and keep the mood light. There's even a legend that a particularly clever monitor once caught a judge sneaking a chew and made him recite the tongue twister in front of the whole court. The woman accepts her new role with relish. She prowls the aisles eagle-eyed, catching 2 young men red-handed within minutes. Betel nut, better not bite, or you'll be banished by the bell before the night, she chants, flawlessly 3 times fast. The crowd cheers, and the young men bow in defeat. The judges, delighted, invite the woman to the front to demonstrate her tongue twister for the entire court. She obliges, adding a little dance for good measure. By the end, everyone is grinning, and the mood is as bright as the midday sun. The scribe, now running out of space on his palm leaf, records the verdict, adding a tiny betel nut next to the case notes. You marvel at the ingenuity of the punishment. It's not about shame or pain, but about turning a small annoyance into a game, a lesson, and a moment of shared laughter as the woman resumes her post. You notice that the courtroom is suddenly quieter, the usual chorus of chewing replaced by whispers and stifled giggles. The betel nut ban, it seems, is working, at least for now. You settle back, savoring the playful spirit of the Siamese courts. Here, even the most minor infractions are met with creativity and humor. reinforcing the bonds of community and reminding everyone that justice can be gentle. You wonder what the next case will bring. A sleepy night watchman, perhaps, or a parade of lanterns. In this place, you've learned, every day brings a new surprise. The gentle hush that follows the beetle nut ban is soon broken by the scribe's next announcement. The case of the night watchman's dilemma. The accused is an elderly man with a lantern in one hand and a sheepish look on his face. His crime? Falling asleep while on duty, leaving the temple gates unguarded and allowing a pair of goats to wander into the sacred garden. The head judge regards the watchman with a mixture of sternness and sympathy. You have a most important job, old friend. Yet the goats enjoyed a midnight feast while you dreamed of rice fields. The crowd chuckles and the watchman bows, apologizing for his lapse. He explains that he'd been up all night the previous evening, helping a neighbor with a sick child, and simply couldn't keep his eyes open. The judges confer, their faces thoughtful. After a moment, the head judge announces a punishment designed to both gently chide and restore the watchman's dignity. The lantern parade. For the next 3 nights, the watchman must lead a procession around the village at dusk, carrying his lantern high and accompanied by children from the community. Each child is given a small paper lantern, and together they light up the paths, singing songs to keep everyone, especially the watchman, awake. Historians still debate the origins of the lantern parade. Some say it was a practical solution, ensuring the watchman stayed alert with company and music. Others believe it was a ritual of forgiveness, turning a mistake into a celebration of community vigilance. There's even a theory that the parade became so popular, other villages adopted it just for the joy of the glowing lights and laughter. The watchman accepts his sentence with good humor. That evening, as the sun dips low, you join the crowd gathering for the parade. The old man, lantern raised, leads the children through winding lanes. Their voices rise in song, lanterns bobbing like fireflies. The villagers come out to watch, some joining in, others clapping along. The goats, now minor celebrities, trot at the rear, munching on leftover garlands. The parade winds its way back to the temple gates, where the head judge and several monks wait to greet them. The watchman bows, promising to stay awake from now on. The children present him with a garland of marigolds, and the judges declare the punishment complete. Though the parade is such a success, the villagers decide to make it a monthly tradition. The scribe records the event, sketching a row of lanterns and a pair of mischievous goats in the margin. You reflect on the gentle wisdom of the Siamese courts. Even a sleepy mistake becomes an opportunity for joy, connection, and a little bit of spectacle as the lanterns are extinguished and the crowd disperses. You feel the warmth of the community's laughter lingering in the air. You settle back on your bench, wondering what other creative, restorative punishments await. Perhaps a parade of parrots or a rain dance defense. In this place, you realize justice is not just about rules. It's about keeping the lights of kindness and humor burning bright. The glow of the lantern still flickers in your mind as the scribe, with a flourish, announces the next case. A dispute over a lost necklace and a confession that may or may not have been overheard. The judges, perhaps sensing the need for levity after the night watchman's ordeal, decide to employ one of the court's most whimsical traditions. The parade of parrots. The accused, a young woman with nervous eyes, stands beside the accuser, an elderly aunt who claims to have heard her niece confess the theft in a moment of carelessness. The judges, unfazed by the tangled web of hearsay, summon the court's resident parrots, 3 brightly colored birds, perched on a long bamboo pole and chattering noisily. The head judge explains the ritual. Each parrot has been trained to repeat phrases it hears. The accused and accuser will each whisper their version of events to the parrots, who will then testify by repeating what they've heard. The crowd buzzes with anticipation. Everyone knows the parrot's verdict is as unpredictable as a summer storm, but it's a spectacle not to be missed. Historians still argue whether the parade of parrots was ever meant to uncover truth or simply to entertain a weary court. Some suggest it was rooted in the belief that animals, being innocent, could not lie. Others see it as a clever way to diffuse tension and encourage laughter, especially in cases where evidence was thin and tempers ran high. There's even a legend that one parrot, having heard too many confessions, began reciting the judge's lunch orders instead. The accused approaches the first parrot, whispering her innocence. The bird cocks its head, then squawks, "Not guilty! Pretty necklace!" The crowd erupts in laughter. The accuser tries her luck with the second parrot, who responds with a garbled, "She did it! She did it!" The third parrot, clearly more interested in a passing butterfly, simply mutters, "Give me mango." The judges, struggling to keep straight faces, declare that the parrot's testimony is inconclusive. The head judge, with a wink, announces a compromise. The necklace will be returned to the court's lost and found, and both parties will help the scribes organize the palm leaf records for a week. The punishment is light, the lesson clear. Sometimes, the truth is as slippery as a parrot's tongue. The crowd disperses, still chuckling at the bird's antics. The scribes, delighted with their new helpers, promise to teach the parrots some useful phrases. Though you suspect, "Give me mango" will remain a courtroom favorite. The judges, pleased with the outcome, prepare for the next case. You reflect on the peculiar genius of the Siamese courts. Here, even the most tangled disputes are unraveled with humor and a touch of absurdity. The parade of parrots may not always deliver justice in the strictest sense, but it brings people together, reminding everyone that sometimes, laughter is the best verdict. As you settle back onto your bench, you wonder what other animal antics or weather-based defenses the court has up its sleeve. Perhaps a rain dance is on the horizon, or a case involving painted faces. In this place, you've learned, justice is as colorful and unpredictable as a flock of parrots on parade. The laughter from the parrots' parade still rings softly in the air as the scribe calls the next case, a curious one involving a defendant who claims innocence by blaming the weather. The accused, a farmer with sunburned cheeks and a hat askew, stands before the judges, explaining that his crops failed not because of neglect or mischief, but due to an unexpected drought and a series of untimely rains. The judges listen attentively, their robes rustling in the warm breeze filtering through the open windows. The head judge strokes his beard thoughtfully, then asks, "So, you claim the heavens conspired against you?" The farmer nods earnestly, pointing to the sky as if it were an accomplice. The crowd murmurs, some sympathetic, others skeptical. The court decides to entertain this unusual defense with a ritual known as the rain dance defense. The accused is invited to perform a traditional dance, invoking the spirits of rain and sun to testify on his behalf. The courtyard transforms into a stage with musicians striking drums and cymbals, their rhythms rising and falling like the monsoon itself. Historians still debate whether the rain dance defense was a genuine plea for divine intervention or a theatrical way to buy time and diffuse tension. Some argue it was a deeply spiritual practice, rooted in animist beliefs that the elements could influence human affairs. Others see it as a clever legal tactic, allowing the accused to demonstrate sincerity and community support. You watch as the farmer moves with surprising grace, his steps echoing the patterns of rainfall, soft taps followed by sudden stomps. The crowd claps along, some joining in, their faces lit with smiles and hope. The judges observe silently, their expressions unreadable. When the dance ends, the head judge nods solemnly. "The spirits have spoken," he declares. "Let the farmer's plea be heard, and his punishment be light." The verdict is a reprieve from harsh penalties, coupled with a communal effort to assist the farmer in replanting his fields. The scribe records the outcome, sketching raindrops and swirling winds beside the case notes. You can't help but admire the blend of law, culture, and nature in this ritual. It's a reminder that justice in old Siam was not just about rules, but about harmony, with the land, the spirits, and each other. As the crowd disperses, you overhear villagers discussing plans for a rain festival, inspired by the farmer's dance. You imagine the vibrant colors, the music, and the shared hope for a bountiful season. The judges prepare for the next case, their robes catching the last rays of afternoon sun. You settle back, feeling the rhythm of the day slow to a gentle pulse. In this court, justice is a dance. Sometimes solemn, sometimes playful, always deeply human. You wonder what the next case will bring. Perhaps painted faces, or a scribe's revenge. Whatever it is, you're ready to as the echoes of drums and laughter from the rain dance defense fade. The scribe, now with a rainbow of doodles on his palm leaf, announces the next case. This time, the charge is not theft or slander, but a dispute that ends in embarrassment rather than injury. The case of the painted faces. The accused are two cousins, both notorious pranksters, who have been caught sneaking into the market at dawn and painting bright colors on the faces of sleeping vendors. The evidence is undeniable. Half the market spent the morning bartering with cheeks streaked in indigo, saffron, and emerald. The crowd, many still sporting faint traces of color, erupts in laughter as the cousins bow, grinning sheepishly. The head judge, struggling to maintain his composure, asks, "What inspired this masterpiece?" The cousins shrug, insisting it was all in good fun and promising they meant no harm. The vendors, though initially annoyed, admit that the prank brought smiles and even drew more customers curious to see the painted market. The judges confer, their robes a kaleidoscope of color in the afternoon light. After a moment, the head judge announces a punishment that fits the crime: the painted parade. The cousins must spend the next 3 days with their faces painted in even brighter hues, parading through the market and helping vendors with their stalls. Each day, a different vendor will choose the design: flowers, birds, even a few cheeky monkeys. Historians still debate whether the painted faces punishment was intended as a true deterrent or simply a way to turn mischief into community bonding. Some suggest it was rooted in ancient festivals where painted faces warded off bad luck. Others believe it was a clever way to let pranksters redeem themselves through service and a little public embarrassment. The cousins accept their sentence with good humor. The next morning, you watch as they appear in the market, faces adorned with elaborate patterns. One sports a lotus blossom on his forehead, the other a pair of dancing fish on his cheeks. Children follow them, giggling, while vendors put them to work fetching water, sweeping stalls, and entertaining customers with their antics. The crowd embraces the spectacle, snapping up painted fruit and vegetables as souvenirs. The market is livelier than ever, and even the sternest vendor can't help but smile at the cousins' cheerful humility. The judges, watching from a distance, nod in satisfaction. Justice has not only been served, but has also brightened everyone's day. The scribe records the outcome, drawing a pair of smiling, painted faces beside the case notes. You reflect on the wisdom of the Siamese courts. Here, punishment is not about shame or fear, but about restoration, laughter, and learning. The painted faces may fade, but the memory of the market's joy will linger long after as the sun dips low. You settle back, savoring the warmth of the day's stories. You wonder what the next case will bring: a scribe's revenge, a coconut shell walk, or perhaps a fish sauce fiasco. In this court, justice is as colorful and creative as the world it serves. The laughter from the painted parade is still swirling through the marketplace when the scribe, now with a streak of blue on his own cheek, calls the next case. This time, the focus shifts from pranksters to penmanship. A nobleman has publicly insulted the court scribe's handwriting, calling it as tangled as jungle vines. The crowd gasps. Insulting a scribe is no small matter in a world where records are the backbone of justice. The scribe, usually reserved, stands tall and composed. The judges, sensing an opportunity for a lesson in humility, invite the nobleman to the front. The head judge, lips twitching with amusement, asks, "If you find the scribe's hand so lacking, perhaps you would care to try your own?" The punishment is announced: the scribe's revenge. The nobleman must spend the day copying legal records onto palm leaves under the scribe's watchful eye. For every smudge, misspelling, or illegible character, he must recite a poem in praise of scribes and their craft loudly, for all to hear. The crowd erupts in laughter, some already composing verses in their heads. Historians still debate whether the scribe's revenge was a common punishment or simply a particularly creative solution for this case. Some believe it was a way to elevate the status of scribes, reminding all of the importance of their work. Others suggest it was a rare but effective method to humble the proud and entertain the community. The nobleman, flustered but determined, takes up the stylus. After only a few lines, his hand cramps, and the ink smudges across the leaf. The scribe, barely hiding his delight, prompts the nobleman to recite, "O scribe, whose hand is swift and sure, your lines are neat, your words endure." The crowd bursts into applause, and the nobleman, red-faced but smiling, continues his task by midday. The nobleman has recited half a dozen poems, each more elaborate than the last. Villagers gather to listen, some offering their own rhymes, others marveling at the scribe's steady hand. The judges look on approvingly, pleased that the punishment has become a celebration of skill rather than a source of shame. As the sun begins to set, the nobleman presents his best palm leaf to the scribe, bowing low. The scribe, gracious in victory, accepts the leaf and offers a few words of encouragement. The head judge declares the matter settled, and the crowd disperses, still chuckling over the day's poetic justice. The scribe records the outcome, drawing a tiny stylus and palm leaf beside the case notes. You reflect on the gentle wisdom of the Siamese courts. Here, even an insult can be transformed into a lesson, a laugh, and a moment of connection. The scribe's revenge is not about retribution, but about respect, for words, for craft, and for one another. You settle back, the sound of recited poetry echoing in your mind. The next case awaits, perhaps a coconut shell walk or a fish sauce fiasco. In this place, justice is as clever and creative as the people it serves. The sun is beginning to dip, casting long golden rays across the courthouse floor as the scribe, now the undisputed hero of the day, announces the next case. A merchant accused of cheating at the coconut market. The charge? Swapping fresh coconuts for old, tough ones and pocketing the difference. The crowd murmurs. Everyone knows the pain of biting into a disappointing coconut. The merchant, a wiry man with calloused hands and a nervous smile, protests his innocence, but the evidence is stacked against him. The judges, after a brief consultation, decide on a punishment that's both fitting and memorable: the coconut shell walk. Attendants bring out a path lined with halved coconut shells, their rough edges turned upward. The merchant is instructed to remove his sandals and walk the length of the path, one careful step at a time. For each stumble or complaint, he must pause and explain to the crowd how to tell a fresh coconut from a stale one. A lesson for all, and a reminder of the value of honesty. Historians still argue whether the coconut shell walk was meant as a test of guilt, a public shaming, or simply a creative way to educate the community. Some say it originated as a festival game that found its way into the courts. Others believe it was a practical punishment for those whose actions made life harder for everyone else. The merchant steels himself and steps onto the first shell. The crowd leans in, some wincing in sympathy, others grinning in anticipation. The shells wobble and shift, and the merchant's face contorts with each step. He stumbles once, then twice, and each time he stops to deliver a lesson. A fresh coconut is heavy and sloshes with water. If it's light, it's old. Look for a sweet smell at the stem. If it's sour, beware. The crowd nods, some jotting down notes, others calling out their own tips. The judges watch with satisfaction as the punishment becomes a lively seminar. The merchant's discomfort softened by the good-natured banter of the audience. By the end of the walk, the merchant is sweating and a little sore, but also smiling. He bows deeply to the judges and the crowd, promising never to cheat again. The judges, pleased with the outcome, declare the matter settled and invite everyone to share fresh coconut water. This time, guaranteed to be sweet. The scribe records the event, sketching a row of coconut shells beside the case notes. You reflect on the ingenuity of the Siamese courts. Here, punishment is not just about pain or shame, but about learning, laughter, and community. The coconut shell walk may sting, but it leaves everyone a little wiser as the crowd disperses. You settle back, savoring the taste of fresh coconut and the warmth of the setting sun. The next case awaits, a fish sauce fiasco, perhaps, or a royal pardon lottery. In this place, justice is as practical and playful as the people it serves. The crowd is still savoring the aftertaste of coconut water when the scribe, with a dramatic flourish, calls the next case. A quarrel between two rival cooks over a spilled jar of fish sauce. The air in the courtroom grows thick with anticipation, and you imagine a lingering hint of salty aroma. The fish sauce fiasco is underway. The two cooks, one stout and boisterous, the other wiry and sharp-tongued, stand before the judges, each insisting the other knocked over the precious jar during the morning market rush. The judges, perhaps recalling their own fondness for a well-seasoned dish, listen with barely concealed amusement. The head judge, suppressing a grin, asks, "Who among us has not wept over spilled fish sauce?" After a brief consultation, the judges devise a punishment that is as pungent as it is memorable: the fish sauce gauntlet. Each cook must carry a fresh jar of fish sauce, balanced on their head, through the bustling market square. If either spills a drop, they must serenade the crowd with a song about the virtues of patience and carefulness. Right there, in the middle of the market, as the morning shoppers look on. Historians still debate whether the fish sauce gauntlet was meant to humiliate, educate, or simply entertain. Some claim it was a practical lesson in mindfulness, teaching the value of steady hands and steady tempers. Others suspect it was just an excuse for the judges and the crowd to enjoy a bit of harmless spectacle and a few off-key tunes before lunch. The cooks accept their fate with good humor. The market square is soon packed with curious onlookers, vendors pausing their haggling to watch the procession. The first cook, cheeks flushed, steps carefully, eyes fixed on the jar above his head. The second follows, moving with exaggerated caution. The crowd cheers them on, some chanting encouragement, others offering mock warnings about slippery tiles and stray chickens. Inevitably, disaster strikes. The wiry cook stumbles, a single drop of fish sauce splashing to the ground. The crowd erupts in laughter, and the judges, perched on a nearby stall, signal for the serenade to begin. The cook, grinning sheepishly, belts out a song about patience, his voice rising above the din of the market. The crowd joins in, clapping and singing along, turning the punishment into a festival. The head judge, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes, declares the matter settled. Both cooks are invited to share a meal with the judges, their rivalry replaced by friendly banter. The scribe records the event, sketching a tiny fish beside the case notes, and you marvel at how even a quarrel over condiments can become a lesson in humility and harmony. As the crowd disperses, the market seems lighter, the air filled with music and the lingering scent of fish sauce. You settle back, your senses tingling, and wonder what the next case will bring. A royal pardon lottery, perhaps, or the laughter of a widow. In the Siamese courts, you've learned justice is as flavorful as the dishes it protects. The last notes of the fish sauce serenade are still echoing through the market square as the scribe, now humming along, announces the next case. A rare and special event, the royal pardon lottery. The crowd buzzes with excitement, for this is a day when fate, not just law, will decide someone's future. The case involves a young man convicted of a minor offense, pilfering a handful of sweet rice from a noble's kitchen. His sentence, though light, has weighed heavily on his family, and today, with the king's birthday approaching, he is eligible for the royal pardon. But in the tradition of old Siam, such clemency is not granted by decree alone. It is decided by a lottery, a ritual that blends hope, suspense, and the whims of fortune. The judges prepare a lacquered box filled with slips of palm leaf, each inscribed with a different fate: pardon, serve sentence, or royal service. The young man bows deeply, his hands trembling as he reaches into the box. The crowd falls silent, the only sound the distant call of a temple bell. Historians still debate the origins of the royal pardon lottery. Some say it was a way for rulers to appear merciful without undermining the authority of the courts. Others believe it was a clever means of involving the community in the drama of justice, making every pardon a public spectacle. There are even tales of entire villages gathering to witness the draw, their hopes rising and falling with each slip of palm leaf. The young man pulls out a slip and hands it to the head judge, who reads aloud, "Pardon." The crowd erupts in cheers, and the young man's family rushes forward, embracing him with tears of joy. The judges smile, pleased to have played their part in this small miracle. The king's portrait, hanging above the dais, seems to gaze down in approval as part of the ritual. The young man is invited to light a lantern and set it afloat on the temple pond, a symbol of his new beginning. The crowd gathers by the water, watching as the lantern drifts away, its flame flickering against the twilight sky. The scribe records the event, drawing a tiny lantern beside the case notes. You reflect on the power of the royal pardon lottery. Here, justice is not just about rules and punishments, but about mercy, hope, and the belief that everyone deserves a second chance. The lottery may be a game of chance, But it is also a reminder that even in a world of laws, there is always room for grace as the lantern's light fades. You settle back, warmed by the joy of the crowd. The next case awaits, perhaps the laughter of a widow or the gentle farewell of floating lanterns. In this court, you've learned, justice is as unpredictable and luminous as the river at dusk. The lantern from the royal pardon has barely drifted out of sight when the scribe, his voice mellow with the hush of evening, announces the next case. The laughter of a widow during court proceedings. The room grows quiet, the crowd curious. Laughter in court is rare, and from a widow, it is even more surprising. The widow, a dignified woman with silver in her hair and a spark in her eye, stands before the judges. The complaint, brought by a stern neighbor, is that her laughter during a previous trial was disrespectful and disrupted the solemnity of the court. The widow bows, explaining that her laughter was not meant as mockery but was sparked by a memory of her late husband's own run-ins with the law, always ending in some gentle, ridiculous punishment. The judges listen, their faces a mix of sternness and sympathy. The head judge asks, "Is laughter a crime or a gift to lighten our burdens?" The crowd murmurs, some nodding in agreement, others glancing at the accuser for a reaction. Historians still debate the significance of laughter in the Siamese courts. Some say it was a sign of disrespect, while others argue it was a necessary release, a way for the community to cope with the absurdities and hardships of life. There are stories of judges who encouraged laughter, believing it kept tempers cool and hearts open. The judges confer and decide on a gentle, poetic punishment. The widow is invited to share a story from her late husband's courtroom adventures, and if her tale brings laughter to the court, she is forgiven. If not, she must sweep the courtyard at dawn, an act of humility, but also a chance to greet the day with a fresh start. The widow nods, her eyes twinkling, and begins her story. She describes her husband's attempt to defend himself against a charge of excessive rooster crowing, which ended with him leading a parade of chickens through the market, each bird wearing a tiny paper hat. The court erupts in laughter, the judges included, and the tension melts away. The head judge, wiping tears of mirth from his eyes, declares the matter settled. The widow bows, her dignity intact and her spirit undimmed. The scribe records the event, sketching a tiny chicken in a hat beside the case notes. You reflect on the wisdom of the Siamese courts. Here, even laughter can be weighed and judged, not as a crime, but as a balm. The day's burdens feel lighter, the air sweeter, as the court moves on to its next case. Perhaps a floating lantern farewell, or a confession etched on a palm leaf. The echoes of laughter linger as the scribe, now sketching chickens in hats with a flourish, calls the next case. The ceremonial floating lantern farewell. This tradition is reserved for those whose punishments have ended or whose debts to the court have been repaid. A gentle, symbolic release back into the community. The first to be honored is the young man from the royal pardon lottery, followed by the cousins from the painted parade, and the merchant whose coconut shell walk is still the talk of the market. Each stands before the judges, who offer words of encouragement and a final reminder that justice is not a chain, but a river, sometimes swift, sometimes slow, but always moving forward. Attendants bring out delicate lanterns made of rice paper and bamboo, each painted with symbols of new beginnings. Lotus flowers, rising suns, and fluttering birds. The judges invite the graduates of the day's peculiar punishments to write a wish or a promise on their lanterns. Some scribble vows to be more honest, others draw smiling faces or simple hearts. Historians still debate the origins of the floating lantern farewell. Some say it began as a Buddhist ritual, a way to let go of past mistakes and send hopes for renewal into the world. Others believe it was a community invention, a way to mark the end of public shame and the return to ordinary life. There are even tales of lanterns that, caught by a lucky breeze, drifted all the way to distant villages, carrying their messages far beyond the court as dusk deepens. The crowd gathers by the temple pond. The lanterns, glowing softly, are set afloat one by one. Reflections shimmer on the water, mingling with the first stars of evening. The judges stand in silence, their faces illuminated by lantern light, as the graduates bow and watch their wishes drift away. The scribe records the event, drawing a row of lanterns and a rippling pond beside the case notes. You feel the gentle hush of the moment settle over the crowd, a sense of closure and forgiveness, As if the day's burdens are being carried away by the current as the last lantern disappears into the night, the crowd disperses quietly, some arm in arm, others pausing to watch the glowing lights until they are just pinpricks on the horizon. The judges return to the bench, their work not yet done, but their hearts lighter for the ritual. You settle back, warmed by the glow of lanterns and the kindness of the court. The next case awaits, perhaps a palm leaf confession or the mysterious disappearance of a magistrate. In this place, you realize justice is a journey, and every ending is also a new beginning. As the last lantern's glow fades into the night, the scribe, his palm leaf now nearly full, announces a case that feels both fragile and profound: the palm leaf confession. The accused is a young woman, her head bowed, accused of spreading rumors about a neighbor's family. The evidence is thin, the truth tangled, and the judges sense that what's needed is not punishment, but clarity and closure. The head judge invites the woman to step forward and offers her a fresh palm leaf and a stylus. "If your heart is heavy, let it lighten with words," he says gently. The tradition of the palm leaf confession is simple. The accused may write their account of events, truth, apology, or even a plea for understanding on the leaf. The confession is then read aloud, not as an accusation, but as a way to restore trust and heal wounds. Historians still debate the origins and meanings of this ritual. Some say it was a practical way to record confessions for the court's archives, while others believe it was a spiritual act, a chance for the accused to unburden themselves in a tangible, lasting way. There are stories of confessions that became treasured family heirlooms, reminders of lessons learned and forgiveness granted. The woman accepts the stylus, her hands trembling. She writes slowly, pausing often, the scratch of the stylus the only sound in the room. When she finishes, the scribe reads her words aloud. An honest account of jealousy, regret, and a heartfelt apology to her neighbor. The crowd listens in silence, the weight of her words settling softly over everyone. The neighbor, moved by the confession, steps forward and accepts the apology. The judges, satisfied, declare the matter resolved. The palm leaf is placed in the court's records, not as a mark of shame, but as a testament to the power of truth and reconciliation. The scribe, his handwriting careful and neat, sketches a palm leaf and a quill beside the case notes. You reflect on the gentle wisdom of this ritual. Here, justice is not just about verdicts and punishments, but about giving people a voice, a way to speak their truth, seek forgiveness, and begin again. As the court prepares for the next case, you find yourself lingering on the memory of the palm leaf confession. In a world where words can wound, it is a rare gift to see them used for healing. The next case awaits, perhaps the mysterious disappearance of a magistrate or the final judgment drum. In this place, you realize every confession is a chance for renewal. The hush that follows the palm leaf confession is deep and thoughtful, as if the entire court is catching its breath. The scribe, his stylus poised, announces the next case: the mysterious disappearance of a magistrate. The crowd leans in, curiosity piqued. This is no ordinary dispute, but a riddle that has puzzled the town for days. The judges recount the facts. A respected magistrate vanished in the middle of a trial, leaving behind only his robe and a half-finished cup of tea. Whispers have swirled through the market and temple alike. Some say he was spirited away by offended ancestors. Others suspect he's simply tired of the endless parade of peculiar punishments and slipped away for a quieter life. The head judge invites anyone with knowledge to step forward. One by one, townsfolk share their theories. A merchant claims he saw the magistrate boarding a riverboat at dawn. A monk suggests he's meditating in a distant forest. And a group of children insist he's hiding in the bell tower, living off temple sweets. The court listens, the mood shifting from concern to gentle amusement. Historians still debate the real reason behind the magistrate's disappearance. Some argue it was a protest against a particularly silly verdict, while others believe it was a test, designed to see how the court would function in his absence. There are even tales of magistrates who vanished only to return in disguise, observing the court from the shadows to see if justice was truly being served. The judges, after much discussion, decide on a fitting response: a day of magistrate's holiday. All minor cases are to be settled by the community, with townsfolk taking turns as honorary judges. The head judge oversees the process, but the spirit is one of playfulness and trust. Disputes are resolved with riddles, games, and the occasional impromptu song. The scribe records the day's events, drawing a robe and a cup of tea beside the notes. The crowd embraces the holiday, settling arguments with laughter and creative solutions. The missing magistrate, wherever he is, would surely approve. As evening falls, the judges announce that the magistrate's seat will remain empty until he chooses to return, or until someone else is bold enough to fill it. The community, having tasted the responsibility of justice, feels both the weight and the joy of the role. You reflect on the lesson of the magistrate's disappearance. Sometimes, the absence of authority reveals the true character of a community. Here, justice is not just handed down from above, but woven together by all who care enough to take part. As the lanterns are lit and the crowd disperses, you settle back, wondering if the next case will bring the sound of the final judgment drum or a last, quiet reflection by candlelight. In this court, every mystery is a chance for the community to grow. Night has settled softly over the courthouse, the air now cool and fragrant with jasmine as the scribe, by lantern light, announces the penultimate event, the sounding of the final judgment drum. This ritual marks the close of the day's cases, a signal that justice, however peculiar, poetic, or playful, has been served and that peace may return to the village for another night. The head judge, his face illuminated by the flickering glow, stands and beckons the court's drummer. A stoic man with silver in his hair and the calm of someone who's seen countless verdicts. At the far end of the hall, the great drum waits. A massive, lacquered instrument, its surface stretched tight with buffalo hide, its sides painted with swirling clouds and golden lotuses. The crowd falls silent, the only sound the gentle creak of bamboo benches and the distant chirp of night insects. The head judge raises his staff and nods. The drummer lifts his mallets, pausing for a moment as if listening to the heartbeat of the village itself. Then, with a slow, measured rhythm, he begins to play. The sound is deep and resonant, each beat rolling through the open doors and out across the rooftops. It's a sound that gathers up the day's laughter, confessions, and reconciliations, weaving them into a single, soothing pulse. You feel it in your chest and in the soles of your feet, a reminder that justice in old Siam is not just a matter of law, but a living, breathing force that binds the community together. Historians still debate the origins of the final judgment drum. Some say it was meant to summon the spirits of ancestors to witness the court's work. Others believe it was simply a way to announce that all disputes had been settled, inviting the village to rest easy. There are tales of drums that could be heard for miles, their echoes carrying news of peace to distant fields and riverbanks. As the last reverberation fades, the judges bow their heads, and the crowd follows suit. The scribe, with a final flourish, sketches a drum beside the day's records. The sense of closure is palpable, a gentle exhale after a day of stories, lessons, and laughter. The head judge thanks the villagers for their wisdom and patience, reminding them that justice is not the work of a single day, but a never-ending journey. The crowd disperses quietly, some lingering to exchange a final word or embrace, others slipping away into the night, lanterns bobbing like fireflies. You remain for a moment, savoring the hush that follows the drum. A silence filled not with emptiness, but with the gentle promise of tomorrow. The last case awaits. A quiet reflection by candlelight, and then, at last, rest. The courthouse is nearly empty now, shadows stretching long across the worn stone floor as the last lanterns flicker. You linger, reluctant to leave the gentle hush that has settled over the room. The scribe, his palm leaves stacked neatly, closes his ink pot with a soft click. The judges have departed, their silks whispering along the corridors, but you remain, drawn to the quiet glow of a single candle burning near the bench. You sit in the stillness, the air scented with wax and the faintest trace of sandalwood. The echoes of the day's peculiar punishments and gentle laughter drift through your mind. The mango taste test, the parade of lanterns, the yawn chorus, the painted faces, the wisdom of elephants and monks. Each memory settles softly, like dust motes in golden light. You recall the faces of those who passed through the court. The merchant with jasmine perfume lingering on his sleeve, the cousins parading through the market in riotous colors, the widow whose laughter filled the rafters, the scribe quietly dignified in his victory. You remember the drum's slow heartbeat and the lanterns floating away on the pond, carrying wishes and forgiveness into the night. Historians still debate what justice truly meant in old Siam, whether it was about restoring harmony, teaching humility, or simply keeping the peace through spectacle and story. Some say these courts were a blend of theater and law. Others see them as a living reflection of a culture that prized balance above all else. You find yourself agreeing with all of them in a way. Here, justice is not a cold decree but a warm, communal act, a weaving together of voices, rituals, and gentle humor. The candle flame wavers, its light painting slow, sleepy patterns on the wall. You feel your own breath slow, your body sinking into the comfort of this ancient place. The courthouse, so lively by day, now feels like a sanctuary, a space where stories are told, burdens are lifted, and everyone, for a moment, is seen and heard. You rise, stretching quietly, and leave the candle burning for the next wanderer who might need its gentle glow. As you step out into the night, the world feels softer, the air cool and kind against your skin. The moon hangs low, reflected in the pond where lanterns once floated, and the village sleeps in peace. Now, as you settle into your own quiet space, let the gentle rhythms of old Siam ease you toward rest. Picture yourself walking slowly through the moonlit courtyard, the stones cool beneath your feet, the air fragrant with night-blooming flowers. Each step is unhurried, each breath a little deeper, as if the stories of the day are falling away, leaving only a peaceful hush. Imagine the soft glow of lanterns drifting across the water, their light growing fainter with every ripple. The echoes of laughter and music fade into the background, replaced by the soothing chorus of crickets and the distant call of an owl. The world feels safe, wrapped in the warmth of community and the wisdom of gentle justice. Let your mind drift over the memories of peculiar punishments and playful rituals, the kindness of judges, the forgiveness of neighbors, and the simple joys of shared meals and silly parades. In this world, mistakes are met with understanding, and every ending is a chance for a new beginning. Allow your muscles to relax, your thoughts to slow, and your eyelids to grow heavy. The stories of old Siam have woven a soft cocoon around you, a place where burdens are light and dreams are welcome. Rest in the knowledge that, just as in the court, you are part of a story that values kindness, laughter, and belonging. Sleep well, knowing that tomorrow will bring new tales, new faces, and new chances for gentle justice. Good night and sweet dreams.